Kevin Nagati here with you. We start with some breaking news out of the NFL, and it's a stunner. Don Madnata and Seth Wickersham report that 8-time Super Bowl champ Bill Belichick will not get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. Despite a record 6 Super Bowl wins as a head coach, Belichick received a call from the Hall saying he didn't have the necessary votes. According to sources, Spygate and Deflategate scandals factored into some of the voters' thinking. Belichick has the most playoff wins in NFL history and the second most total wins, only behind Hall of Famer Don Shula. Mike and Frank have much more in tonight's PTI bonus topic.
All right, Frank, what's your reaction to Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Well, I think it's ridiculous. The credentials are there. He won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach in New England, 2 defensive coordinator with the Giants. Kind of sounds similar to what happens in baseball with guys that are linked to steroids, cheating. Ooh. This probably has a little bit to do with it. The sports writers, whoever else is involved, the guys in the media are looking at it. We'll give them a little punishment for Spygate and Deflategate, because I think when you think Hall of Fame coach, Bill Belichick, you could put him up there with all the greats in the NFL. You'd think of him as a Hall of Fame.
Frank, I'm not going to disagree with a word of that, but let me do a little bit of inside baseball, having sat in that room as an elector for 10 years. And there are discussions that go on. I remember when people thought Joe Gibbs was going to come back, and he later did. They didn't want to vote for Joe Gibbs in real time the first year after he retired because people thought he may come back, and we don't think he should be eligible for that, even though at the time there was no real provision to prevent it.
Yep.
So, and a second thing about that's inside baseball in that room, there's some of the all-time greats that went in like 15 years later. Lynn Swann, I think, on a 14th ballot. The great Art Monk on a 12th or 13th ballot. And you're like sitting there going, wait a minute, why isn't this person in? And there were people in the room. It's not the Baseball Hall of Fame. First ballot doesn't mean the same thing in every sport or every election. So it used to make me nuts, but that was the nature of that room. So the pro football, and again, it's not the NFL Hall of Fame. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Means a little something else.
If he's media friendly, does he get in this year?
He's going to get in anyway. It just may not be this year. He's getting in.
I think
he's getting in.
It's Bill Belichick.
There you go with that New York baseball sensibility. There you go.
Well, he was a Giants assistant coach.
He's getting in.
That's it. We're done. Back to you.
Sorry, Bill.
Frank, Mike, thank you for much more. Senior NFL insider Dan Graziano joins us now. Graz, all right, some context. Belichick fell short of the 40 out of 50 votes needed to get into the Hall. What's your reaction to this story?
It's embarrassing. If I were a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting body, I'd be embarrassed about it, and I'd make it very clear that I was not one of the 11-plus who decided not to vote for him. I used to be a Baseball Hall of Fame voter. We took a lot of grief about that process, which is absolutely fairer and more sensible than this one. The Pro Football Hall of Fame voting process is inane and should be completely overhauled, and this has been true for a long time. Maybe this will prompt something of a change because, again, they should be embarrassed. There's no reason not to put Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame. You're going to tell me Spygate and Deflategate. This is a voting body that has for years insisted that it only focuses on what happened on the field. Are you going to hold Tom Brady out over Spygate and Deflategate too? Like, are you going to be consistent with that? And by the way, there's guys in there that have been suspended for performance-enhancing drugs, for gambling, for all kinds of things. So now, when it comes to Belichick, it matters, and it's never mattered before. I think it's a crock.
Certainly, a statement was made, and for Bill Belichick, of course he's a Hall of Famer. It's just a matter of time. So maybe the case he's on the 2027. All right. Another head coach opening has been filled in the NFL. It's not Bill Belichick, but it is the Bills. They promoted offensive coordinator Joe Brady. The 36-year-old Brady worked under Sean McDermott, who was fired last week. Since he took over at OC in 2023, the Bills have been second in the league in points per game. From Graz back here again. Walk us through Buffalo's decision to stay in-house with Joe Brady.
Yeah, they interviewed a lot of people. Josh Allen was involved in the interview process, and a lot of the candidates have close ties to Josh Allen. Maybe none closer than Brady, who's his current offensive coordinator. But they also interviewed Brian Daboll, who was Brady's predecessor in that role. They interviewed Davis Webb, who is a young coaching prospect who's only been coaching for 3 years, but was Josh Allen's backup quarterback for a few years in Buffalo, and they are close. So it seemed like it was important to them to find somebody they knew had a good working relationship with Josh Allen. Joe Brady, that's not the only reason to hire him. A lot of teams have interviewed him and considered him as a candidate over the last few cycles, including this one. He had 2 interviews with the Raiders in this cycle. So he's somebody who's seen as a head coach prospect. The Bills felt like the combination of his overall abilities and his relationship with Josh Allen made him the choice.
Keep the quarterback happy. Graz, hang tight. There's more head coach questions coming your way. Trust me, in a matter of minutes. Again, another head coach opening has been filled here as the Bills make this decision. And a closer look when Brady inherited one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL in 2023. But under his watch, they changed. The Bills have switched to a run-first offense behind Josh Allen and James Cook. NFL analyst Mina Kimes joining us. Now, Mina, what was your reaction to the Bills staying in-house and going with Joe Brady?
You know, I wasn't terribly surprised. There'd been a lot of smoke around this for a while, ever since Sean McDermott was fired. And I think you can understand the Bills' thinking on some level, especially when you look at a team like Tampa, right, where they didn't retain their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen. He leaves, has so much success in Jacksonville. The Tampa offense takes a step back, and you can imagine Buffalo worrying that that would happen to them if they lost Joe Brady. And this was a very good offense last year. I know at times there were some ups and downs, but over the course of the season, they were 4th in DVOA, 3rd in EPA per play. All of that despite the fact that there were some, I would say, personnel deficiencies, particularly at receiver. That leads me, though, to where I'm still a little apprehensive, which is I looked at this offense and I thought, wow, Joe Brady did a pretty good job despite the personnel. But then they kept the GM and promoted the GM. So it does, in totality, feel a little bit like Sean McDermott got scapegoated and viewed as the piece that held them back. Time will tell if that proves to be true. There are reports that they're considering bringing in some outside thinking on defense. Jim Leonard is a name being thrown around from Denver. I would love that because you don't want it to feel completely like they're running it back. And on defense, there are some other personnel issues that need to be covered up and need to be addressed.
Yes, I think that offense masks a lot of those issues on defense. By the way, Brady becomes the youngest active head coach in the NFL, surpassing the Saints' Kellen Moore. Mina, thank you. So we are down to 3 as we continue to follow the developing story with the openings around the NFL. The Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Browns. The Cleveland one may have some complications surrounding Jim Schwartz, who's the DC of a very strong defense and also a candidate for the head coach openings. Back now, as promised, with Dan Graziano. So, Graz, what are you hearing as the search rages on here in Cleveland?
They had a very long in-person meeting yesterday in Los Angeles with Rams offensive passing game coordinator Nate Scheelhaase, who's a 35-year-old coaching prospect that a number of teams have been interested in. And it was thought around the league at one point yesterday that was the guy they were closing in on and that something might be close, but it hasn't happened. So you mentioned Jim Schwartz, who's their defensive coordinator, who has interviewed twice for this job already this offseason. He could be the guy they ultimately go with. I think the conventional wisdom has been that the Browns wanted to bring a young offensive mind in and keep Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. But if you're going to do that, maybe it makes sense to make Schwartz the head coach. And lurking in all of this is former Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken, who is still a candidate in Cleveland as of this afternoon. And if he doesn't get that job, he likely goes with John Harbaugh to be the offensive coordinator for the Giants. But right now, it seems like he's still got a shot in Cleveland. So that's probably the list, unless they're going to add somebody to it at the last minute. But the timing on it, I still think all these jobs get filled by the end of this week. But exactly when is certainly for the Browns to figure out.
Speaking of a list, since 1999, the Browns have had 12 head coaches, and the search continues to find the right one. Graz, thank you so much. All right, let's stay in the AFC North. The Steelers, they figured it out. They welcome home Mike McCarthy today. Their new head coach grew up in Greenfield, a suburb of Pittsburgh.